The Fool, a novel written by hiermonk Savatie Bastovoi, based on the events described in the life of Saint Simeon, the Holy Fool for Christ of Edessa, originally composed by Bishop Leontius of Neapolis in Cyprus, and later included in the collection The Lives of the Saints by Saint Simeon Metaphrastes. Chapter 2. The odd-looking stranger who had entered the city was a 59-year-old man, 30 of those years spent in the desert. He was of Syrian descent and came from the city of Edessa, born into a fairly wealthy family. Because of his harsh and solitary life in the wilderness, his beard had grown thin, and his hairline had receded far beyond the crown of his head, making him appear older than he truly was. Yet, when he looked at you with his innocent, glistening black eyes free of expectation, you sensed that he knew everything about you. That awareness stirred a strange feeling, as though you were encountering something wholly new and unfamiliar. His eyes did not merely rest upon you. They reflected you. They were so clear, so transparent, that they seemed like two openings through which you could see yourself. There was something else about him that felt out of place. His skin. It was stout and almost too smooth for a man of his age. The closer you drew to him, the more elusive he became. He seemed at once old and young, emanating a subtle, undefinable unease, while at the same time drawing you toward him without any apparent cause. In short, he was unlike anyone else. News of the Fool monk spread quickly. The city square, teeming with all kinds of people, from merchants and comedians to passing travelers and curious onlookers, seemed especially animated that morning. Word traveled from mouth to mouth that a monk had arrived who possessed mysterious powers, who could appear and vanish at will. Some claimed he could fly. Others swore he had split a dog in two with a single glance. The circus performers, who at that hour would normally be shouting and beating their drums, now sat in their usual place, listening intently to the dancer, around whom a crowd had gathered. She spoke with fervor about the strange apparition, describing his unusual hands and eyes, insisting that he exuded a fragrance like rare spices. From time to time she would lift her palm to her nose, inhale deeply, and exclaim, "Look, I can still smell it! Come and see for yourselves if you don't believe me." The woman stretched out her hand toward the faces of those gathered around her, inviting them to inhale the lingering scent. Her sweeping gestures were abruptly interrupted by the leader of the troop, who announced that anyone wishing to hear more must first drop a coin into the troop's purse. Some offended turned away, muttering that anyone could rub spices on their hands and claim to have touched a sorcerer, and that they had never heard such shameless nonsense. Others, however, began tossing coins into the bag, demanding the full and truthful account, while insisting that silence be kept. Though many could scarcely follow all that the woman was saying, she spoke with such intensity that her agitation spread through the crowd. Even a few foolish monks, who had abandoned their market stalls to listen, began whispering that the devil himself had come to the city disguised as a monk, foretelling imminent catastrophe for all Syria. Meanwhile, the Fool vanished into the city streets. Emesa, the largest city in Syria, offered a multitude of sights to any wandering eye. Yet the newcomer's ears still rang with the children's clamor and the unrestrained laughter of the comedians. He had not heard such laughter in 30 years. how greatly the world had changed. In the desert, no one laughed like that. Indeed, since entering the monastery, he realized that not only had he never heard such laughter, but he himself had not laughed either. An image lingered in his mind, a woman with her face painted, her head tilted back in disarray. As her lips parted, exhaling what seemed a foul breath, she burst into laughter like the shrill neigh of a wild mare. To him, her face had seemed profoundly unattractive. How strange, the fool reflected. When a person smiles gently, the countenance brightens and awakens love. Yet when one abandons himself to unrestrained laughter, the face contorts and flushes red. He began to wonder whether man had been made for such outbursts at all, for in surrendering to them, he seemed to lose something of his beauty. He arrived at a small square at the far end of which a church loomed. Leaning against a wall stood a woman who seemed unwelcome among the beggars seated before the church. The monk drew the piece of meat from his bosom and hurled it at the old woman as though he had come upon an ancient enemy, shouting and gesturing wildly. She quickly snatched it up, chuckling with satisfaction, and hid it beneath her rags, fearful that the fool might change his mind and reclaim his offering. Meanwhile, the fool, rubbing his hands in triumph, began skipping toward the church. He alternated between kneeling and leaping as though riding a horse, babbling incessantly like an overexcited child.